Hey guys, what's going on? It's Gale right here, back on the 5-9 channel. Today we're presenting to you guys our tier list for the 2020 DFE TURs of Dokkan Battle. And of course, this is only including the DFE TURs, mind you, not including the LRs. The LRs are in the LR tier list done a couple of days ago to a week ago. Today with me, I have Nolar and Sura. Why don't you guys say hello?
Hey guys, first time back on the tier list and on recording for a little bit, so this is going to be a lot of fun.
Hello everyone, I hope you enjoy our list and please don't slaughter me for my list. I know it's controversial.
Obviously, Sora is bringing out the excuses already. We'll see what his tier list is going to be in a couple of seconds. Of course, this tier list is based on 100% rainbow units, nothing else. Link levels, pretty much we kind of ignored it while making this list, but we primarily wanted to make this list at 100%. So all these units are tested at 100%. We probably might talk a bit of their performance at 55, but the main thing is when we made these tier lists, it was at 100%. Sora, could you give us an idea on how we calculated the averages before we jump into the actual list itself?
Simply speaking, we just made our own list and then we added the position for each and every one of our lists for a specific unit and then ordered them from the lowest number to the highest number. So for example, if a unit was placed number 1 in all 3 of our lists, the cumulative total would be 3. While a unit was at number 5, number 7, and then number 4, the total would be 16, which would place him lower on the list.
Well, there you go. So basically, that's the idea. And if one of our units, say, if I put in, I'm just giving a random unit, Kefla, say, for example, if that's not on my list, we gave her an arbitrary number of 11 just because it's a lower number, technically, quote unquote, so that she would be placed lower in the list effectively. Without further ado, however, let's get into our top 10 units of Dokkan Battle in 2020. Mind you, this is also including global, so there may be some units that are on here that didn't release on the Japanese version of the game in 2020, but it did in the global side. But without further ado, let's get into number 10. We have AGL Bardock, released on Saiyan Day. Nolar, give us a quick rundown on why you think he's so good to be placed into the top 10, just on the cusp of the top 10 even, actually.
Yeah, so for me, Bardock is, he's in the bottom half of my top 10 just because he's a very good unit, regardless. Like, the amount of stuff he can do, it's just amazing. You know, if you decide to bring him against, extreme units, which is half the game, or against LOE, or not LOE, this is not Legends, Wicked Bloodline, he does very, very well. The downside to him, which is why he's further down on the list, is, can I find a friend? That's kind of the problem. I'd like to run his team, but can I find him? That's a big factor for me on my top 10 list, is how well they perform in all areas of the game, and then how often can I run them. So Bardock is very good. It's just unfortunately because of the terrible friend system, I don't get to use him too often as lead, that is. But as a sub unit, he's fantastic, and whenever I need a super AGL unit or Goku's family unit, he's one of them I'm taking.
I completely agree with what you said there, and one of the reasons why I didn't even put him in my top 10, he was on the cusp, I would say. I think he would have been like number 11 or number 12 for me. But the problem for me is, like you said, we have to look at all aspects of the game, and his best performances come against a Wicked Bloodline enemy, right? Not the whole game isn't Wicked Bloodlines. It's not like, say, Cooler, who performs amazingly with Pure Saiyans or Hybrid Saiyans, and that's like 80% of the game. Wicked Bloodlines, while, consistent, we've got a lot of Friezas, we got a lot of Coolers. The rare occasion you fight King Cold or Chilled and Super Strike, I guess, and some other stuff. It's not that common of an enemy compared to, say, Pure Saiyans and Hybrid Saiyans, like I mentioned. So definitely, I find him somewhat of a jack of all trades, but a master of none, in my opinion. His transformation conditions aren't bad. He has an active skill transformation, which is good because you can pretty much do it whenever you feel like, rather than it being enforced on you. Especially considering he's a stacking unit before he transforms. So there are positives to him, but he's limited by those positives, I feel, sometimes.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much. It's not bad at anything, but at the same time, it's not the best at anything, which, considering the current state of the game, where all the top tier units are the best of the best in pretty much every aspect.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you on that one. We'll move on to the next unit on our list, which is at number 9, and that is the newest unit from last year even. SSJ2 Goku transforms to SSJ3 Goku Angel. Sora, you've placed him quite high on your list, of course, from what I remember. What do you feel about him, and why have you placed him so high?
The thing about the Super Saiyan 2s is that we'll talk about Vegeta further down the line, because yes, he's on the top 10, of course he is if Goku is in, but the thing is that the Super Saiyan 2s are never bad, like never, and it's not a Bardock situation where they're good, but they're not exactly performing the greatest every time. No, they're performing really, really well in pretty much all of their teams. Their links are good, not spectacular or anything, it's not like Vegeta levels of good, but they're still pretty good links. Their defense is actually quite astonishing, especially at Rainbow. They reach about 200,000 defense after attacking in base form disease, which is freaking fantastic. That's enough to not take damage from pretty much any Super Battle. And they deal quite a lot of damage, considering they also have a 30% multiplicative boost in their passive. So, like, I feel like most of the community kinda underrates them a bit, and I don't really get it at all, honestly, because they're great, they're good at anything, they're good at everything. I honestly don't get the downplay.
I don't know if Nolar is going to say the same thing I am, but for me personally, I find it sometimes a bit tricky. It's not rare, but it's not uncommon either that I get into trouble where I may not be able to get the 3 key needed for them sometimes. And obviously once he transforms as well, his link sets aren't necessarily the best for linking to any unit, and of course that can hurt him as well. So for me, those are some things that let him down a bit, and he's still on my list. I think he's like on the lower half of him. He's on 9th or 10th. He's 9th for me, I think. And yeah, he's still very, very good, but at the same time, I feel that's what holds him back is his link sets once he transforms, and his orbs, or his orb requirements. I find orb requirement units anyways very questionable sometimes. It can get a bit dicey. Sometimes the orbs don't fall the way you want them to, It's out of your control at times, of course. So for me, those are things that kind of hold him back, but at the same time, I see his potential as well. Especially once we start getting another World Warrior support unit, once, the SSJ3 Angel Goku gets his EZA, if he becomes an orb changer, there's an infinite amount of possibilities, and I can see his potential, but right now I do find him very good, but with a couple of flaws that keep him from being higher on this list, I feel like. What about you, Nolar? What do you think about SSJ2 Goku?
Well, while I agree with Sora that the Super Saiyan 2s, both Goku and Vegeta, are fantastic, the only reason why I actually left Super Saiyan 2 Goku off the list is that his leader skill is both Otherworld Warriors and Super Saiyan 3s. On a Super Saiyan 3 team, until he transforms, which for the most part you'll get there, but until he gets there, he really gimps the team. He doesn't have Over in a Flash. Besides Super Saiyan 3 Bardock, no one else has prepared for battle. So he just doesn't really do well. And then on top of that, what you already articulated, the orb requirements just suck. On those teams, unless you have an orb changer dedicated for him as a floater or on rotation, it can be difficult to get him at least the 3 key, right? And then we're not even talking the 5 or 6 key he needs for the extra boost. So I agree. Super Saiyan 2 Goku, when he goes to Super Saiyan 3, he's a very good card, and he doesn't suck at all. It's just that for me, when you're talking top 10 lists, he gets held back because his leader skills, Otherworld Warriors, well, there's another Otherworld Warrior leader on this list that we all rate very highly over him, so he's kind of invalidated there. On the Super Saiyan 3 team, sorry, Yuden, it's just not very good right now. It needs a couple boosts, and unfortunately, outside of Heroes units, and maybe like a rehash of a couple units, there's really no other way to boost it. So he's just kind of sitting there dead in a way. But I don't fault people for liking him or putting him in their top 10. Like Sora, I think he is worthy of a top 10. It's just on my priority list and what I think of the units of the caliber that came out this year, he's just not there, personally.
Yep, and there you go. Yeah, like you mentioned, there are things that hold him back, but we move on to the next unit that this is a very divisive one, and you know, I think all of us have placed him in like different corners of the planet, literally. Sora's placed him in the top half, I've placed him in the lower half, and Nolar, you've just not included him whatsoever, and that's Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken Goku, who makes a shocking, in my opinion, I'm not surprised because of Sora's placement, he's here, but I'm surprised because of your placement, he's come down a lot. And okay, let's start off with you, Sora, because you're the one who's, you know, got him so high up. I'm gonna leave the floor to you as to why you think Super Saiyan Blue Goku is so high up.
Okay, so the thing is that since we're judging units at Rainbow, offensive power is quite high, which is, I think, something we can all agree. Teams at Rainbow deal tons of damage. And the thing is that what Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken excels in is damage. Damage, damage, damage. Which makes it so that in Super Battle Road, in pretty much all of his stages, bar like Last Resort, which is the only one where you can't use the Spirit Bomb, you can nuke the stage with, like, yeah, you have to use items to make sure you don't die and all, but the game doesn't really require you to know item runs, so I don't really consider that a negative, so long as you can actually win the run. And like, you can win every single battle in 1 to 2 turns, which is fantastic. I don't think I have to say that. Solely thanks to his active skill, which is completely broken. And even in long events, his active skill allows you to skip the hardest phase of the event for free, basically. Just with a flick of the wrist. And while, yes, it is kinda limited, since you need the 3 other representative of Universe 7. Since Super Saiyan Blue Goku released in 2019, there have been so many new Universe 7 units that have been so broken, like the Blue Boys or UI Goku, that it's not that big of a drawback anymore. In fact, you might even actually consider it a plus at this point, since all the units that have come out for that category are so strong, which is why I think he fairly deserves the spot on the top 10 list and higher half of the list for me.
And Nolar, what about you? We'll go to the opposite ends of the spectrum first before attacking me, because I'm in the middle of you two, basically. So what about you, Nolar? Why have you left him off your list?
Okay, while Sora makes a point that there are more units for Universe 7 that have come out, so it's a lot easier to get his active skill off, it still restricts the team building to a point where I think 80% of the time I'm only looking to play Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken Goku as just him and not activating his active skill. So when I look at him at that perspective, defensively he's not very great till he starts taking some hits, so yeah, use some items. On Super Battle Road, I agree with Thor on this. You don't have to know item run stuff. Like, items are meant to be used, obviously. But for people who only pull, you know, a couple units here and there, it's like, those items are precious in terms of judiciously using them at the right moment. And if to optimally use a unit, you have to use items consistently. That's where people are just like, I don't want to take the unit. It makes sense, so I don't blame them for that. But yeah, overall, I just see his Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken as just as a Kaioken unit. He stacks attack, he gets stronger and stronger, but that's all he can do for me. I don't count the Spirit Bomb stuff because about 80% of the teams I can use him on can't utilize a bunch of reps of Universe 7. So in that regard, I just analyze him like that. Where do I use him the most? How does he perform? He performs okay. It's good we have a rep of Universe 7 Dokkan Fest lead, but it's just, I don't know. He didn't impress me that much. He's still just kind of meh. If I were to actually place him in like a top 20 list, he'd probably be in like 10 to like 11 or 12, like just on the cusp potentially. Because he's still a fun unit to play. If you love big offensive numbers, this is the unit you want to play with, because it just obviously keeps growing and growing. But overall, just not there for me. So he's out of the top 10.
That's fair. And I kind of am I'm like a mix of you guys, basically. I see his issues quite drastically sometimes, especially like you said, it does hinder team building a bit. Like, I know that I think a majority of the categories he's on, he can pull the Super Spirit Bomb active skill off, but then you have to hinder yourself by adding those reps of Universe 7 team members into that team, which kind of makes it like, well, I want to use other units on this team rather than just having to use reps of Universe 7 because Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken needs it, right? And at the same time, he does take a lot of damage even at Rainbow. I'd say I feel like that's the case in my opinion. As you said, items can be quite, you want to use them sparingly and in case there's something goes wrong, because not always can it be like, oh, you're guaranteed like the perfect turn or something like that. Something could go wrong where something might not work out and that could affect your entire run as a whole. So that's why I've placed him a bit lower, but at the same time, I can see the fun in him. I do prefer him to some other units in terms of just the amount of fun I can have with him. Whenever I can, I try and run or whenever I feel like it, I try and run a Universal Survival Saga / Reps of Universe 7 team with him as the leader, or friend leader, I should say, because I don't own him personally, just so that I can experience the fun of having him or using him at least. But yeah, that's our verdict on Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken Goku. He comes in at number 8. Next up, we have the second SSJ2 unit of last year's New Year's Dual Dokkan Fest, and that is SSJ2 Vegeta. We'll start with you, Nolar. You've placed him on this list compared to not placing SSJ2 Goku, and quite relatively high. You've placed him near mid-table. Why so, and what do you think is better about him compared to the Goku?
Because he actually leads Super Saiyan 2, which is a very, very fun team. Like if I were to rate all the Super Saiyans, I obviously I'm partial to Super Saiyan Force, but like in terms of cohesiveness and the units you could run, Super Saiyan 2 is super very, very fun. So just looking at what he could lead there, that gives him the leg up over Goku in my opinion. I could find more Super Saiyan 2 Vegetas than I can find Super Saiyan 2 Gokus, so that's why he's higher up. He also leads Resurrected Warriors, which again, there's another unit that leads Resurrected Warriors, but until then, he was actually really good on that team. If you were going to run a more Saiyan-centric lead, or team comp, I should say, that's a good unit to use. And then, I mean, even though he's, the other half of Super Saiyan 2 Goku in terms of the kit, I just find his kit more fun to play with. So, it's just a personal preference that I think, having talked to a lot of people, they like Super Saiyan 2 as a team when they can get the team together. Obviously, my box is very rare amongst a lot of people where I have everything and mostly rainbowed, so I have a lot of fun with it. But from just talking to the general public, they do enjoy Super Saiyan 2s and as a category, and that's why I put them up fairly high comparison to everybody else.
I agree, and one more thing I'll add on as well, like in terms of his transformation, it doesn't literally, like, his link set doesn't become gutted like SSJ3 Goku's, where it's like, oh, it's focused on helping SSJ3 Gokus, but before the transformation, he's useless with other SSJ3s and vice versa as well. Here, it's consistent across the two transformations. I think the only thing he gets is over in a flash in favor of Prepared for Battle, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
When he transforms, so again, not too crazy of a change, especially on a Super Saiyan 2 team. But yeah, like you said, I've placed him at number 8 on my list as well. Pretty similar position to you, effectively. Very fun unit to use. I'm glad I got him in the end as well, personally. He's been a lot of fun whenever I can use him. And like you said, he's a bit more defensive, I feel like, especially with the whole guard thing. But that's obviously with the condition of getting 6 key orbs, which is rare, arguably. But again, that's the same reason why he's also literally joined with SSJ2 Goku on my list, is that orb restriction I'm not a huge fan of at all, because I feel like you need an orb changer for those situations. Is it required? Not necessarily, but it does mean that's how you pull off his maximum potential, and to get that maximum potential you have to go out of your way to get it, and that for me is quite detrimental, because again, it affects team building as well. So that's the reason why he's lower on my list. But you, Sora, have put him smack dab in the middle, for your table, that is, of course, or your tier list. Why do you think so?
I mean, basically you can take all I said about Super Saiyan 2 Goku and apply the same for Vegeta, since he is Goku that deals a bit more damage, tanks slightly better, and has slightly better links. So that's about it, really. And about your point of the guard, I don't really believe he needs it, because even when transformed after super attacking, since he get really stacks defense for one turn, it reaches over 250,000 defense pretty easily. So like, yeah, getting the 6 orbs is a bit of annoyance and all, but it doesn't really need it at all. It's completely fine defensively even without it, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree with you, but I'm just saying if you want the maximum potential, that's why I specifically said if you want to get everything out of him, it's a bit of an annoyance to get it. But I agree with you. It's not necessarily required, as you say, because he does get that defense boost with lower as you go lower in HP, I think it is, right? But yeah, let's move on to the next unit on our list, who comes in at number 6, and that is pretty even across the board for all of us. I think we placed him like almost exactly the same position, and that is Beerus. Nolar, why don't you start us off with why Beerus is placed so evenly across the board for all of us?
I think we all agree that Beerus is a very good card. He does tons of damage, and he's got a very good kit. But in order to maximize him, you really need to build a team around him. I think we can speak for all of us where we say that you just gotta get a Whis in there, potentially an LR Beerus and Whis, or whatever you can to really build him, build the team around him, because he can one-shot a stage himself. Like, it's not unheard of for him to do that. So he's not bad defensively at all. I mean, he needs to get that first hit in order to get the boost, but up until then he's okay, and then afterwards he's definitely fine. But yeah, you give him a Vados, you give him a Whis, or Beerus and Whis, and just watch him wreak havoc on everything. Realm of Gods being a lead for Realm of Gods is also really good too, because there's a lot of units you could run with. So on one rotation you can use a Beerus and a Vados, or Beerus and Whis, or whatever, and the other one you could run, I don't know, UI Gokus, and Super Saiyan Blue Evolution Vegeta. Like, there's just so many options you could play with that he really fills out the team. So yeah, as a card by himself, he's very good. He's got a great lead. Just the downside is to really maximize his potential, you just got to build the team around him, which is why I think we placed him at around like 6 and 7, top 10. So yep, Beerus is great.
No, I completely agree with what you said. I think in my opinion, the only reason why he's so mid-table for me is just because of the fact that his link set is what lets him down, and you have to build a team around him, like you said. So I can't add any more on that. You pretty much covered what I would have said as well. Sora, do you have anything else to add on about Beerus?
No, pretty much nothing. What Nolar said describes my feelings about him perfectly. He's a great unit, but he really requires a rotation to be dedicated for him. And one small thing I'd like to add is that this works pretty well when you have him in a singular copy in a team. But it can be a bit tricky when you have 2 copies and you only have, for example, 1 Whis or 1 Vados. So you have a Beerus floating, which half of the time will create a bit of a mess, since it won't link very well with the second rotation and everything.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of why you run some other Realm of Gods lead, considering we have, 4 now? We have him, LR UI Goku, Zamasu, and of course, the OG and UI Goku. So, yeah, it's kind of why you tend to run some other Realm of Gods lead in favor of running another Beerus, because like you said, it can be a bit tricky unless, you have like both Vados and Whis, or you have Beerus and Whis as well, the LR that is. We move on to the next unit on this list, which is, this is gonna cause a lot of trouble. Gohan, I should say Ultimate Gohan, comes in at number 5 on our list. I think we should start off with our positives first before we jump into Sora's. Nolar, why don't you start us off as to why he's why he's in the upper half of this list?
Okay. So for me, when he just came out on JP, which I just want to say was it right before the worldwide celebration? I want to say that's what it was.
Yes.
Okay.
It was early August, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so he came right before. So when he first came out, he was very good, right? Guarding, greatly raising attack and defense, and then the transformation, like everything about his kit is great. I don't think anyone can argue that it's not a very good kit. The only downside is his links are trash, in general.
Yeah.
So to be fair, you know, he's just a one-man wrecking crew. Once he gets started, you can't stop him. And he is defensive, like extremely defensive. Like first turn on Super Battle is probably the only time where he could take a ton of damage. That is, he eats a super. But after the first turn, once he gets one super attack off, potentially two, he's got enough defense to last you through the rest of the Super Battle Row stages. So that's why people are very high on him. That's why I am high on him. But the reason why he's like number 3, I put him on number 3 strictly because the biggest issue, or the biggest thing about him is he fits on Battle of Wits. Well, I mean, not Battle of Wits, Majin Buu Saga. When you're talking about LR Strength Vegito being one of the best units, clearly it's he's like one of the best units on that team and on one of the best teams. So clearly for me, he's way up there.
No, I agree with you. And I'll also like to add on to the point is that his leader skill, in my opinion, Hybrid Saiyans is fantastic. I feel Saviors has been improving slightly here and there, but I just feel like as a category, it's another one that's kind of existing. I'm not a big fan of it, honestly, personally at least. It needs more fleshing out before it becomes any sort of usable at all. And again, like you said, his link set is a bit low for me. And the reason why I've placed him number 4 on my list is because the 3 units above him just seem a lot more fun to use. Don't get me wrong, Gohan's fantastic. I love seeing the 99 times he guards, and of course his greatly stacking attack and defense, and you know, his absolute one-man army kind of domination that he can operate with. But I just find him like, it just feels like the other 3 units will just give me some more joy in using him. But that doesn't mean he's not bad at all. I still think he's like, again, one of the best units in the game available for people to get, as a TUR especially. And his transformation conditions isn't necessarily the worst at all. It's just a 5th turn activation, which isn't difficult to achieve at all. Sora.
Yeah.
Let's go to you. You've placed him at number 10. Why?
Okay, so the reason is that, simply enough, this isn't a free-dupe list. And I know this may sound stupid, but Rainbow teams don't really need Gohan. Unless you're going for no item runs or whatever, but as I said earlier, I don't consider no item runs. The game doesn't ask you to do those. If you want to do them, sure, whatever. You can also do runs with 5 Cybermans. That doesn't really matter for me. Gohan offers a lot of tanking. I think we can all agree on that. His best part is tanking, by far. But Rainbow teams don't exactly need that, because every unit is pretty much decently tanky. It's not like we're at Free Dupe where every unit gets beat for 90k on a normal in a Super Battle Road, and you really need an anchor to rely on. Gohan doesn't really fit on Rainbow teams for me because his links are terrible, and we can all agree on that, I feel like. And his damage is not that good either, because he lacks damage gimmicks. Like, if you look at the Super Saiyan 2s, for example, the 30% attack they get on Super Attack is multiplicative. The boost they get at the start of passive is huge. The links they have is like 40-50% attack, which adds up to quite a lot. Meanwhile, Gohan, while he does have some pretty good numbers in his passive, his link set is just so bad, it puts him down when it comes to damage considerably. Because right now, the average for links is about 40, 50, even 60% from when it comes to attack. Meanwhile, Gohan usually gets 20-25%, which is less than half. And I don't think I have to say that it's not really good when your average amount of attack is lower than half than the overall average of TURs. And which is why I put him at number 10, mostly. And yeah, his transformed state is great when it comes to damage, but he still has the linking problem where he doesn't give a whole lot of attack to his partners, which further accentuates his damage problem. So not only does low damage, but he makes his partners also deal less damage than they would with pretty much any other unit. And managing to get him to 12k every single time, with considering that his only healing is Saiyan lineage, can be a bit of an issue sometimes. So, like I said at the start, if this was a 55% list, Gohan would be way higher for me. Like, probably top 3. For sure. But this is not a 55% list, this is a rainbow list. And for how I see it, Gohan doesn't really fit on a rainbow team most of the time.
I mean, that's fair. I completely understand where you come from. I respectfully disagree, but no. But on a real though, I can see where you come from. And yeah, let us know what you guys think about that. It's a very interesting. What do you think about that one, Nolar? Do you have anything to come back at it, or because I mean, this is this one. I think this one is going to be the most controversial one, quote unquote.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of agree. Well, I won't say agree. I see where Sora's coming from, where he's evaluating him at 55%. The damage output, I'll admit to that, is not very good in comparison to other Dokkan Fest exclusives. But I think the value of him is just strictly the tanking. Like, well, at least that's where most people like completely love him, is the fact that you would take him on Super Battle Road and turn 1 he generally won't eat a ton of damage. I mean, there's outside of like Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta and a couple of like automatic like Golden Friezas, like AGL Golden Frieza or TEQ Golden Frieza, there's not many units that can match that and yet have that same amount of damage out. Like, he's the best damaging tank there is from the get-go, and I can see where Sora is like, well, his damage not great compared to the Dokkan Fest units. I agree. I see his point where he's evaluating him at Rainbow. Does he give a lot more value at Rainbow? That's a good argument to make. I kind of disagree, but I can see it. So, like you, Gail, I see where he's coming from, but I don't necessarily agree.
I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, no.
We'll have our own opinions in the end.
I mean, yeah, this is obviously all opinions, guys. Don't slaughter Sora in the comments. I mean, you don't need to slaughter me or Nolar. We're fine.
One thing I'd like to add in the end is that most people love Gohan because they don't have heavily duped teams, which is why they see him as this like all-powerful god that will bring them victories and victories. Because their teams are like 55%, 69%. They don't have rainbow teams. So seeing him just sit there, take hits, take next to no damage and deal respectable damage for 55%, they value much higher, which I completely agree with. And it's why I said that for me at 55% is a top 3 unit.
No, I agree with you on that one. The average player base would probably have him at 2, would probably have a team at 2 dupes. Let's give it at that as an average, right? So I can see where you're coming from in that regards. But that's Ultimate Gohan coming in at number 5. Next up, we have a more recent unit that we have been calling a copy from last year's unit, and that is STR Bojack coming in at number 4. Obviously, I think my placement of him is a bit higher than the other guys, so I think I'll start off by saying, personally, I think he's fantastic. Again, he is basically cooler, but in my opinion, I wouldn't say slightly better, but just a lot more fun to use, and I prefer his team selection just because of the wide variety, because he leads, Space Traveling Warriors and, correct me if I'm wrong, Terrifying Conquerors? Question mark?
That's a good question. Let me double check that, but keep going, keep going.
Keep going, okay. But I think it's I know Space Traveling Warriors because that's his new category. I know that one for fact. But I just prefer his category selection that he has currently. It just makes him a lot more fun to use. The variety on the team is fantastic. He's a great support unit. Overall, just seems a lot of fun. He bolsters the LR in Bojack quite a bit. We've been demanding for it for a very, very long time. And overall, I just find him the definition of fun. And I'm looking forward to when he obviously arrives onto Global, of course. It's going to be very interesting. Of course, Sora, you placed him a lot lower than I did. What are your feelings about him?
Most of my issues with Bojack is that it's not bad at anything really, it's just that his link set is very limited. Like, if you don't run in with LR Bojack,
yeah,
you probably won't have more than 3 links active, usually. And like, it still performs decently well even in those conditions, but it won't be exactly outstanding, so to speak.
I stand corrected, by the way, it was Time Travelers.
Yeah,
it was the right... It started with a T, but I was wrong. So Time Traveler, still fantastic category because of STR Rose and the Roses and Zamasus in general. That's why I was thinking he had Roses and Zamasus on his team. Just the wrong category.
Yeah.
Continue on, sorry.
It's mostly just this, honestly, because like when he's paired with LR Bojack, I'll be the first to admit, it's quite impressive. Still not the best of the best or whatever, but it's pretty good. That rotation can win you some runs, so to speak, but if you don't pair him up with STR Bojack, he can feel a bit, I don't want to say lackluster, but a bit underwhelming to what he could possibly be. And I mean, that's completely fine. He works pretty well even as a floater, since his support gives both key and stats, which is nice. So even if you don't activate every single one of his links, he won't be a detriment to his team, much like, unlike someone like Beerus, which can cause some issues. But at the same time, it's not a Beerus situation where if you like set him up correctly, he will win you some rounds alone. He will be a part of why you win the run, but he won't be the reason for why you win the run.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I agree with you in that, yeah, his link set is kind of iffy for a lot of units, but I still believe, you know, he doesn't have, like you said, the same problems where Beerus is, where he doesn't link to absolutely anybody, you know, if he isn't put with somebody from his own, like, family, quote unquote, you know. He has Big Bad Bosses, Thirst for Conquest is still a fantastic link set. I do agree he probably will lack the key of it, in my opinion, but again, that's the reason why he does have the whole Space Traveling Warriors support to that, and that helps him a lot, in my opinion. What about you, Nolar? You've placed him, I think, smack dab in the middle of your tier list, so what are your thoughts on Bojack?
Yeah, I really like Bojack. When people say he's a copy and paste of Cooler, I understand their point of view, but I would say as a card itself, he's slightly better than Cooler in the sense that, like, he can do way more damage, assuming you can get those extra orbs off in his transformed state. But pre-transformed, like, I agree with Sora where his link set's strictly for Bojack units, so you're looking at Zangia, other Bojacks, other full power Bojacks. Yeah, you probably, if you want to maximize the potential of that unit, you need to link them there. But at the same time, on Time Travelers, you can throw him off rotation because he has that supporting factor in him where, yeah, okay, he'll do like 1.9 million as a support unit. So sure, I that's fine. You know what I mean? So I like him quite a bit. I enjoy playing him a lot. Like, he is probably the definition of fun. Like, I agree with you with that. His super attack animation is fantastic. So he's just, you know, at times he performs a bit better than Cooler in the sense of, like, if you can get triple supers where you get those, like, those 6 key spheres off for him, that's a lot of damage. Like, that's a lot of damage. Even though it's not a guaranteed crit, we're talking at least 7 million attack stats. I really have fun playing with him, honestly. I do. So overall, I think he's a very good unit. The only thing that kind of holds him, like, not in the top 5, he's just right at number 5 for me, it's just because you really need to link him with a Bojack unit, or a Heraclan unit, so like Zangia, or whenever they decide to make Beto or, you know, all those guys useful, like as an SSR, sure, but yeah, that's the reason why he's a little bit held behind, but overall, I love his kit. I do.
And yeah, with that being said, Bojack comes in at number 4. We move on to his original form, let's call it that, I suppose, in STR Cooler, who comes in at a surprising number 3, even though I don't think any of us placed him at number 3 in our list. So how has this happened? I mean, it's pretty obvious as to how this has happened, so I'm looking at you. I mean, to be fair, let's be honest, it's your 8 and 10 positions that have caused it to be lower than Cooler, but we'll move on to Cooler nonetheless. Sora, what do you think about Cooler, and why is he at number 3, even though we haven't placed him at number 3 technically?
Cooler is just great. I don't think anyone can disagree with this. Yes, one of the best, if not currently the best extreme link set, tied with Janemba probably. He supports 2 incredibly strong categories with Transforming Boost and Terrifying Conquest.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember the name.
You got confused because I said Terrifying Conquest for Bojack, right? I swear, even I got confused. That's why I was like, wait a second, that's Cooler's leader skill. What am I on about? That's why I immediately changed and remembered Time Travelers. Yeah, go ahead,
and
sorry.
He debuffs the enemy for both attack and defense, which is neat in Super Battle Road, since it not only makes him take less damage, but helps the whole team as a whole, which is, in my opinion, a better contribution than for example, someone like TEQ Gohan, which doesn't take very much damage for himself, but can leave others exposed. Just a personal preference here. I mean, his damage is pretty insane even in base form, considering he has like 90% attack in links or something like that. and it's not only from him for him, but it's for his linking partner too. And he gives the attack and defense from their passive, which amounts to even more insanely high amount of damage. And his transformed state is just ridiculous. I don't have any other words to say it. You can transform as soon as turn 3. You have guaranteed crits against basically more than half the game. You have a 30% chance to launch a second super attack. Thank you, STR Janemba, for buffing Cooler.
Yep.
You really needed the damage buff, let's be honest here.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I can agree with whatever you've said, honestly. I think, in my opinion, the only thing that kind of is, like you said, his super attack effect is fantastic, especially for Super Battle Road specifically. I mean, that's where lowers attack and defense anyways comes in handy, because that's the only place you can, I swear, do it. Otherwise, you rarely can. I guess Battlefield is one more place, I suppose. Him being a support initially is great, especially with how much he supports. Depending on how many enemies you're facing, of course. His transformation condition isn't impossible because, again, as I mentioned it, I think earlier on with the case of Bardock, Cooler thrives off this game because this game literally features Pure Saiyans and Hybrid Saiyans every other celebration. So, it's not hard for him to be a monster, quite literally. And, I mean, the less said about his transform state, I don't have to say anything about it because it's actually ridiculous as to how much he can output in that state. So I agree with you, whatever you said. The only reason I place him lower than in Bojack, in my opinion, is I just feel Bojack's a bit more fun. I feel also at the same time, I guess a bit of recency bias. You could also put it down to that, I suppose. But also I find at the end of the day, I find Bojack's team selection a bit more wider, I feel, at some points because of time travelers as well as space traveling warriors, because of the additions that we may get in the future down the line. It's no spoilers, of course. I can't say any spoilers, but maybe in the future, if they do decide to revisit the anime, we could see some expansions coming to that. So I just find that potential to be much higher than Cooler's as of this moment, of course. Nalar, what about you? What are your thoughts on Cooler?
I mean, he would be probably 1 or 2 if the 1 or 2 slots weren't so crazy good as they are. Transformation Boost is forever going to be a top 5 team, and so he's going to have a special place there because he leads that team. And again, me, Talon, and a bunch of other Dokkan YouTubers have shown, you can have a whole team of super types and Cooler's still going to support you. So he's going to age the best, and so far, I mean, he's for JP, he came out October of 2019. He's still, like, in my opinion, a top 5 TUR. So he has aged very well. He's going to continue to age very well because he is both a support unit and an attacking unit. When he gets power crept in the attacking portion, you just leave him untransformed and he'll forever be useful in that regard. So I think his team selection, I kind of disagree with you, where his team selection is going to get bigger because every major Dokkan Fest unit is going to be in Transformation Boost. So that team's just going to continue to get huge over time. But that's why I think Cooler's just slightly, and for me, he's number 4. He slightly edges out Bojack just because Transformation Boost, I feel, is a bigger category, has a bigger impact than, say, Space Traveling Warriors or Time Travelers.
Yep.
So yeah, either way, he's very, very good. I don't think anyone can argue Cooler is terrible. If you did, you need to get checked because there's no objective way to say that he is bad in any form.
People have seen enough. Tech Ultimate Gohan's better, bro.
You know what? That is very true. I have seen the meme, and that meme needs to die. But nonetheless,
it's gotten a bit too over the board now. Even I have to agree with that. But no, I agree. I think the thing is between those 2 units in specific. Before we move on to our number 2 and number 1 slots, is that Cooler and Bojack, in my opinion, are quite interchangeable. Arguably, you could easily just place one or the other, and that's the reason why people do say again they're copy paste, because literally they have very similar kits, very similar teams. Even it's only their link sets that separate them, as well as their leader skill, in my opinion. Of course, their super attack effect as well, but their link sets was what separates them. And I think I can see why people place Cooler higher than Bojack, is because he's a much better linking partner than, say, Bojack is, of course. So, which is, again, like I said, completely fair. But we move on to his to the second place man, who is effectively Cooler's brother, quite literally, and in terms of this list, right next to each other, and that is Physical Angel Frieza. I was gonna say Golden Angel Frieza, but that's his transformation. Nolar, you place him at number 1 in your list. Tell us why before we move on to Sora.
Well, I think he's the best unit overall of this year. He's my favorite unit too, because just the versatility, it's just fantastic. You can transform turn 1 if you need that kit to go, the angel form to go, the golden form. Or you just leave him there and stack defense forever in base form, and so like for every game mode he has a usefulness. On top of that, Resurrected Warriors 4 key, dude. The LRs that need in Resurrected Warriors that need that 4 key, it makes them super 18 key way often. So the damage output is 10 times better. At least it just feels that way to me. He's a fantastic unit. He's a main rotation unit. He's not a support unit, but the versatility of him just is like, look, he can tank if you leave him untransformed, or he can do a ton of damage when you transform. So up to you how you want to play, and I love that play style of the game where they let you pick and choose. You want one thing, here it is. If you want the other thing, you can take that too. So just his overall versatility in both long form events and short term events like Super Battle Road, he excels very well. So that's my opinion with that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, and especially I find some of his, he can do a lot of things in one. He seals a super attack, of course, before he transforms. He lowers attack and defense via his kit, and like you said, that 4 key is insanely useful for units like, say, LR Majin Vegeta, LR Tech Broly, and so on and so forth. And especially LR Majin Vegeta, we still don't know what's gonna happen with, summonable LR EZAs, but assuming they don't change drastically where they get more key and stuff like that, this Frieza is gonna come super in handy to showcase those units especially, and I think he's fantastic, a very good solid unit overall. What about you, Sora? What do you think about Fizz Frieza?
I mean, I don't really have much to say about him. He's great in everything. The only thing I don't particularly like about Frieza is that his link set won't exactly fit the best in all of his teams, since he has the usual Frieza link set, and in some teams like for example, Representative of Universe 7, Universe Survival Saga, and stuff like that, you won't exactly have the best of partners for him to link up with, so you may have to give up on most of his link set to use stuff like Torment of Power, Fierce Battle, and that's about it really. Which is basically the only negative I have about this unit. Everything else about him is completely absurd and out of the ordinary, for sure.
I agree. And I mean, there's not much more to say about him. He's just an absolute monster. But speaking of monster, we move on to our number 1 unit of 2020. We gotta return to Monkey, I suppose, and that is SSJ for Gogeta, comes in at number 1. Sora and I have placed him at number 1. Nolar's placed him at number 2. I mean, I can see why it's quite tricky placing, who's gonna be number 1 versus number 2. It's very difficult. But Sora, what do you think about Gogeta, and why have you placed him at number 1 in your list?
Where do I even start with this unit? If you need a unit for whatever you need to do, Gogeta is the unit for you. He's way too good at absolutely everything. His defense is absurd. Like, it takes no damage even in Super Battle Road from turn 1 from normal attacks and super attacks, which is basically the only thing that can damage him. He has a 50% chance to counter. So, why? He didn't really need that, but okay, I'll take it, I guess. His damage is also absurd, considering he has a 240% attack from turn 1, greatly raises attack, which also is a true 50% multiplier to his counters, because he needed that extra buff, let's be honest here. And also is super effective against all types. So, I mean, small stuff. No, nothing crazy.
And it's nothing crazy at all. And I mean, he also is type effective for 8 turns, especially from start of battle. And especially when you're in Super Battle Road, out of all things, as much, Super Battle Road doesn't go for that long. In other modes, maybe like Infinite Dragon Ball History, you could say like, yeah, but it goes away after 8 turns. But I mean, in Super Battle Road, you just need like maximum 5-6 turns probably.
At Rainbow?
And at Rainbow, okay, if you're talking at Rainbow especially, it's probably 3 to 4 turns tops, maybe even, yeah. So in my opinion, like, yeah, as you mentioned, he's an absolute monster of a card. And I mean, I know we joke about him basically being another copy from Jiren and stuff, but I mean, what a monster. And his link set isn't terrible either. I mean, I say it isn't terrible either. It's the ideal link set you'd want for any Saiyan, basically.
Yep.
Super Saiyan, Kamehameha, Shocking Speed, Over in a Flash, GT, Fused Fighter, and Fierce Battle. It's mainly
Shocking
links
Speed is
you'd
basically
see.
his only bad link.
Yeah, Shocking Speed's the only one I'd say, like, that could have been prepared for battle and it would have been a godsend. But, you know, apart from that, that link set is fantastic. You know, it's very, very usable, especially once we start seeing more stuff coming from GT down the line. Maybe we'll see Goku, Vegeta fusing into Gogeta, stuff like that. That'll make him an even bigger monster, especially as a partner to that card. Overall, in my opinion, he is like the ideal card. Let's not even forget his active skill, which, you know, he only needs to take damage like 4 times and he can basically debuff the enemies by 40% and give himself another 40% attack and defense on his active skill, which is a multiplicative, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's multiplicative.
Yep.
And so he becomes an even bigger monster, basically. So, hands down, personally, one of my favorite cards of this year. I mean, the only sad part about him releasing, in my opinion, is that we missed out on a potential dual Dokkan Fest in the near future, unless Akatsuki decide, oh, you know what, we'll do another GT celebration for Worldwide Celebration or something. But still, amazing card. Nolar, what do you think about Gogeta before we wrap up?
Okay, so I love Gogeta and the only reason he's number 2 for me is that in the longer events, he starts to fall off a little bit. Like, I mean, it's not not a huge drop off, but it's just after 9th turn, not always super effective. So it's kind of like, okay, he falls off a little, but that's the only reason why I put him out number 2 on my personal list. Number 1 was Frieza for me, but I love Gogeta. He's very, very good. Short-term events like Super Battle Road, he's king. I don't think anybody else can come close in terms of countering and stuff like that. The active skill is stupid on SBR, like stupid on SBR.
Yep.
I just don't know the way to put it. So the only downside again is his link set, which is exactly the same as the TEQ Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, and I had the exact same criticism there where before the link level update, all he had were key links. But to be fair to him, what do you take out? Like, he needs Super Saiyan, he needs Kamehameha, he needs Over in a Flash, he needs GT, he needs Fused Fighter, he's a Fierce Battle Unit, so Shocking Speed is the only one you could take out for like an attack link. But preferably, like you said, Prepare for Battle is probably the better link. And again, that's generally a key link. I know with link levels, they have a secondary effect, but to be honest, it's not that big of a deal, right? The secondary effects on key links are not that huge. So
even now with the link update, he still gets up to 67% attack, which is pretty high.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I just want him to be broken. Gogeta's my boy. I want him to be broken. There's
Hey man, Gogeta's the better fusion, I must say.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to.
Let's be honest. Yeah.
I'm just trying to say, like, 67% attack is great. I'd like 150, but that's just me. So. But
I mean,
anyways,
we need the. You know, that's one thing I'll say a bit off topic is we do need an equivalent of big bad bosses for super characters. I'm sorry.
I don't disagree at all. So at some point when they do another link level update, hopefully that will be signed on for everyone. But nonetheless, Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, I think, you know, especially if you guys summoned on the Dragon Ball Heroes, I'm talking on Global here, and you've got Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, you've got the Broly, you want this guy. You know, save your stones for him if you can, because he makes that team go crazy. So, I agree. He is the number 1 unit of the 2020, the Dokkan Fest exclusives. So, very happy.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that as well with the giant tape power category. We still can see a lot more to come. Like I said, we could still see another fusion Gogeta card that actually has a transformation/fusion mechanic. We could still see a lot more being added from heroes, the limit breaker forms, and technically the SSJ4 Gohan we got according to Goresh isn't even the Zeno one, so the Zeno SSJ4 Gohan has yet to come. Limit breaker forms, so on and so forth. So there's still a long way to go and potentially a lot more cards for the giant ape power category to thrive off. But that's our overall list, I should say, or average list, you could say, of the top 10 units of Dokkan in 2020. Before we wrap up, let's go through each of our lists individually and, go through it. Sora, why don't you rattle off yours and then we'll go to Nolar and mine to wrap us off.
Also, one small thing I'd like to say, which is kind of funny, I just noticed, like, Gogeta is at number 1 and he has 4 points, because I put him first, Goel put him first, and Nolar second, so 4 points. Frieza has 5 points, Cooler, which is third, has 13 points. That's... Like, the sheer gap between units between second and third place is massive.
Yep.
Yeah.
But, like, anyway, going for my list, I don't particularly have much to say. Like, I think you can probably tell from this list what I consider the most, which is links and how much utility they bring to the team, and not necessarily just what performance they have.
Yeah.
So, for example, a unit like I don't want to use Tech 1 again, so STR Cooler, which I think we can all agree he has fallen a bit. He's still a great unit, but he has fallen a bit. He's still really, really high for me because he still has that super passive. He still has that great link set. So even though he may not be the best of the best in terms of damage or defense anymore, he still has such an insane utility kit overall with the debuffs, buffs, good damage, good defense, and everything else. He still warrants a really high spot on the list. Meanwhile, a unit like AGL Bardock, which performs quite well, doesn't really offer that much to the team other than his own pure performance, which is why he's at number 9.
Yeah. What about you, Nolar? Any? Of course, I know you have 2 units that didn't make the top 10 list. Do you want to talk about them quickly before we rattle us off? Before I say what I missed out on my list.
Yeah, so at number 10 I had Kefla, at number 9 I had Go Tanks. And the reason why I put them there was they perform very well, but their teams, like especially Go Tanks with youth and special pose, I won't ever run them as a lead, if that makes sense. They're more sub-units. So with that in regard, they're going to be great performing units. They just are terrible leaders. I can't run the team, but everyone else from 8 to 1, like Bardock, Vegeta, they're all in there at some point, and we've articulated why we did it. So yeah, the ones that didn't make the list, but I can see why. There's Kefla at 10 for me, and 9 is Go Tanks.
And for me personally, on my list, I added Android 13 on number 10, and my only thing is Android 13's only crime when he released was being released after Cooler, unfortunately, because effectively he's a slightly worse Cooler for his own team, basically, right? He's got very similar kits to Cooler, and he's another, like, I would say another copy of Cooler, basically, or he was or Cooler was a copy of him, or whatever. I don't know when they were made or what order they were made in, but you can look at Android 13's kit. It's a very similar situation. He gives himself attack and defense, and then he supports the Android's category as a whole. He has guaranteed hits as well. His transformation conditions isn't the worst, but it's not great either, because it's I think it's 2 or more androids and then from the 5th turn, so it's not amazing because you still have to build a team around him. And then on top of that, the categories he's part of doesn't necessarily have that many androids in it, just like it's the same situation as Super Saiyan Blue, Kaioken, Goku, I would say.
Yep.
And his leader skill of Target Goku it needs some more love, I'd say. I think that's the best way to put it. It's a solid category. It has some good units in there, the type like Broly, Baby Vegeta, Cells, all that. But it's a category that still needs a bit more fleshing out, in my opinion, because none of them would link very well with one another apart from the androids themselves. And I mean, at that point, you're running an androids category team, basically, right? But I still believe he's a great unit overall. I still think he's quite underrated across the board. A lot of people do underrate him, in my opinion. And that's why I put him at number 10. He's not amazing. That's why he's not in the upper half or like even beyond number 9. But he's at a solid number 10 for me personally. But yeah, that's our tier lists for the year 2020. Of course, hopefully we can come back next year unless something ridiculous happens to Dokkan in the next month or so after anniversary. Let us know your opinions on this list. Remember, this is our opinions as well. We had various opinions throughout this tier list. I think this is going to be the longest tier list video we've made over the last couple of days. So fun times. Let us know what your top 10 units of 2020 are in the comment section down below. Anything you guys want to mention before we close off, Nolar or Sora?
Not really, honestly. I feel like we said pretty much everything that had to be said.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd just say is, you know, tier makers, they're all fun in games, but in the end, it's all about who you have fun with, right?
Oh, yeah,
If you
exactly.
really like playing with Android 13, and he's like your favorite unit of them all, nothing we say can dissuade you from that. So first and foremost, like as great as this is, it's a good discussion piece, really analyzing things. It's all about your personal play, your preference of play, and so hopefully that comes across.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, like, this is, at the end of the day, Dokkan's a PvE game. God forbid they had PvP, please no. I beg. I can't be bothered with another PvP gacha game. But this is a PvE game. You can enjoy with whatever you want. You can summon for whatever you want, whatnot. That's always been the case with Dokkan, and I've always loved that about Dokkan as well. But yeah, leave a like and subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching. Our links will be in the description down below. There's our link tree for all the 5-9 related stuff. Nolar's, mine, and Sora's social links will also be there down below, or our links to the website to look at our social links will be there as well. But yeah, that's all from us today. We'll see you guys in the next one. Hopefully it's going to be anniversary time, so hopefully we'll be doing a video for that inevitably. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time though. Peace out, everybody.
See you guys.